There is a circle sealed at your base since the first trauma you don't remember. Between the bones of the ilium and the sacrum, there is a structural ring that should pulse in continuous motion, but in you, it's frozen. In the next few minutes, you will discover exactly where your creation jams and how to release that point with 3 precise sacred gestures. Its name is the Ilio-Sacral Circle, and it is the vibrational seal that decides whether your energy descends from intention into reality or dies before it reaches the ground. The blockage didn't begin with you, it was inherited, transmitted through generations as a silent containment that your body learnt to carry. When this ring is released, the base reroutes, the breath descends into the belly, and life finally moves again. Turning off this video now means continuing to carry a weight you never knew how to name, stuck at a point no one taught you how to unlock. What is jamming your creation isn't invisible. It has an anatomical location, it has a name, and it has a solution. I'm going to show you how this seal was forgotten and why it is the starting point of any real manifestation. This point functions as a pivot between everything you think and everything you do. It is where the force of intention must pass to become gesture, to turn into tangible reality. The pelvis was designed to operate in constant micro-movements, oscillations that synchronize breathing, posture, and the circulation of vital energy. But when a traumatic event happens, the body interrupts this pulse so it won't feel anymore. Micromobility is sacrificed in the name of emotional survival. The ring enters a mode of silent protection, and what should flow begins to stagnate. By the end of this video, you will have access to a complete somatic practice, 3 progressive vibrational gestures followed by 3 integration steps. The sequence restores the creative micromobility of the base and deactivates the pattern of nervous system containment. The practice is precise, measurable, and immediate. You will feel the body move where before there was rigidity. In the ancient mystery schools, the base was treated as the first portal to be opened for any true transmutation. Without it unlocked, no real alchemy happened. This knowledge was never lost, only forgotten. And what makes it be forgotten has roots both in symbol and in the nervous structure. Modern science calls this lumbar guarding, a contraction that immobilizes the pelvis. When free, this base draws in space the shape of infinity, a sideways 8 that integrates opposites and allows energy to circulate without stopping. This geometry is not casual. It keeps the spine suspended, the diaphragm free, and the nervous system regulated. When this drawing is interrupted, the body loses its internal axis. The creative energy, which should descend from mental intention to concrete action, encounters a vibrational barrier right at the beginning, the frozen base. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory explains that, in states of inescapable threat, the dorsal nervous system enters defensive collapse. Immobilization happens to prevent the body from feeling again. Studies on sacroiliac mechanoreceptors show that subtle movements in this region send signals of safety to the brain, deactivating hypervigilance patterns. The body does not forget, it only silences what it could not process. And what is silenced there, you are going to learn to release now. The practice happens in 3 progressive vibrational gestures, each with a precise purpose in the activation of this seal. The first movement is the most subtle, and for that very reason, the most powerful. You will work with pelvic microcircles, standing, with knees slightly bent. It is not swaying, it is not broad rotation, it is pulsing, as if the center of your base were waking from a very long sleep, testing the space around it before moving fully. Stand with your feet hip-width apart. Bend your knees just enough to feel that the joints are soft, not locked. Now bring your attention to the space between the bones of the ilium and the sacrum, this ring that is at the center of the pelvis. You don't need to visualize it anatomically. Just feel the region as a living point, capable of movement. Begin to draw tiny circles with this point, so small that, from the outside, almost no one would notice. The movement awakens dormant mechanoreceptors in the sacroiliac joint. They are microscopic sensors that register pressure, tension, and displacement. When they are stimulated by subtle, repetitive movement, they send signals to the brain saying, "It's safe here, you can relax." The nervous system receives this message and begins to switch off the containment pattern that kept the base rigid. This is why the movement must be minimal. Large movements activate muscles. Minimal movements activate nerves. Slowness is crucial. Each circle takes 3 to 5 seconds to complete. You are not doing physical exercise. You are conversing with the nervous system through the somatic language it understands. Conscious movement, gentle rhythm, internal presence. Do not force, do not speed up. Let the body recognize the gesture as something familiar, something it already knew how to do but had forgotten. The breath accompanies naturally. You don't need to control it. Just let the diaphragm pulse at the same rhythm as the pelvis. Continue for 2 to 3 minutes. At first, it may feel like nothing is happening, but little by little, you begin to feel a subtle warmth in the lower belly, a slight vibration at the base, as if something were awakening from within. Sometimes, a spontaneous sigh rises from the chest. Other times, the legs tremble slightly. This is not weakness. It is release. The body is letting go of what was held, layer by layer, without haste, without drama. When you feel that the movement has gained fluidity, that the pelvis is pulsing on its own, without conscious effort, you are ready for the second gesture. But before moving on to it, remain a few more seconds in this state. Feel how the ring between ilium and sacrum is no longer frozen. It has returned to pulsing, and when the base pulses, the whole life moves. This is the first key. The first seal has been opened. Now, the next movement will deepen this opening. You are going to start drawing the symbol of infinity with the sacrum, the geometry that restores the circulation of creative energy. But before that, take a deep breath, feel the ground beneath your feet, and acknowledge that something has already changed. The body is remembering what it is like to be alive again. The second movement is spiraled. Keep your knees slightly bent, your posture vertical. The sacrum rises on one side, descends crossing the center, rises on the other side, and returns. A continuous flow that integrates right and left, front and back. When the sacrum traces this path, it activates an ancient neurophysiological pattern etched into the body's structure since forever. The nervous system recognizes the movement as a code of balance and responds by releasing the tension that kept the base jammed. Breathing enters here as a guide. When the sacrum rises on one side, inhale. When it descends and crosses the center, exhale. It rises on the other side. Inhale again. It descends, exhale. This rhythm calms the nervous system immediately, because the body recognizes this pattern as safe, as natural. At first, it may feel strange to coordinate movement and breath like this, but in a few cycles, the body takes over on its own. You no longer command, you follow along. The figure 8 is the form that connects polarities without either being annulled. Heaven and earth, intention and action, masculine and feminine. The energy circulates because it finds a complete path without interruption. Continue for 2 to 3 minutes. Keep your attention on the sacrum, feeling how it moves in space. Do not visualize. Feel. The warmth in the lower belly increases. The breath gains amplitude without effort. Sometimes, the body sways slightly to the sides, adjusting the axis. Allow it. You are restoring a pattern that was interrupted long ago. The body knows what to do. It just needed to be reminded. When the movement gains total fluidity, when the figure 8 draws itself, without mental command, you are ready for the final movement. This will be the most intense. You will seal the release through short pulsing and sound. The energy that was stuck will finally dissolve, and what was frozen will return to flowing as it should have from the start. The third movement is different from the previous ones. The pelvis does not draw circles or spirals, it pulses. Quick, short movements, like small vertical beats at the base. At the same time, you emit low sounds on the exhale, ah or hum, coming from deep in the belly. The voice is not decorative. It vibrates through the spinal column, reaches the sacrum, and amplifies the releasing effect of the movement. The sound creates a mechanical wave that travels through the deep tissues, loosening what movement alone would not reach. This gesture directly activates the ventral vagus nerve, responsible for regulating the state of presence and safety in the body. Vocalization stimulates vagal fibers that decrease cortisol, relax the deep musculature, and facilitate spontaneous emotional release. That is why, while you pulse and vocalize, you may feel involuntary sighs rising from the chest, intense heat in the lower belly, or even find tremors in the legs. Some people feel old emotions coming to the surface: sadness, anger, relief. None of this is a problem. It is only the body letting go of what was held. Continue for 1 to 2 minutes. Then stop. Take a deep breath 3 times. Feel the weight of your feet on the ground. Let the body stabilize. Return to vertical posture with renewed awareness of the central axis. This is the first integration step. The second is to allow the breath to descend naturally into the lower belly without forcing. The third is to remain standing for another 30 seconds, just feeling what changed. What changed is subtle, but real. The base is no longer frozen. The ring between ilium and sacrum has returned to pulsing. The breath descends where before it encountered a blockage. The creative energy that was stagnant begins to flow again. You don't need to believe this. You will feel it. The body does not lie. It only responds when treated with the language it understands. Conscious movement, vibratory sound, internal presence. The practice is complete. The seal has been reopened. The Ilio-Sacral Circle has been reactivated. What was jammed since the first trauma, inherited or lived, that point where your creation could not descend, has returned to pulsing. And when the base pulses, the whole life moves. Creation ceases to be intention suspended in the air and becomes force rooted in the ground. This is not metaphysical. It is somatic. It is measurable. It is real. Audrey was 51 when she realized she could no longer breathe all the way down. It wasn't shortness of breath. It was an invisible barrier in the lower belly, as if something inside her had given up on descending. She had carried chronic rigidity in her lower back since adolescence, but never knew how to name where it came from. Therapy helped the mind. Meditation calmed the thoughts. Exercise strengthened the body, but nothing touched the core of the problem. When she discovered the Ilio-Sacral Circle practice, she didn't expect much, but she followed the 3 movements: the subtle microcircles, the spiral of infinity, and finally, the pulsing with sound. It was in the 3rd movement that something changed. A deep sigh came from a place she didn't know existed. Then, heat, an intense heat in the pelvis, as if something frozen for decades were finally melting. She felt the ground under her feet in a way she had never felt before, as if she had come home to her own body. In the following weeks, Audrey noticed changes she couldn't explain rationally. Creativity returned. Not gradually, suddenly. She woke with clear ideas, a desire to create, energy that didn't need to be forced. The breath descended to the belly naturally, without conscious effort, and that rigidity she had always carried, that containment she thought was part of who she was, simply wasn't there anymore. It wasn't healed. It was dissolved. The change wasn't magical. It was somatic. Her body remembered something it had forgotten: how to pulse, how to flow, how to be alive without needing to defend itself all the time. And what Audrey felt in that deep sigh, you can feel too. Because what changed in her wasn't luck, it was technique. And technique can be repeated. What she unlocked, you can unlock too. When you practice, 3 markers will appear in the body. First, the breath descends into the lower belly without conscious effort, as if the path were finally unblocked. Second, warmth or subtle vibration in the pelvis, a sensation of living pulse where before there was silence. Third, the vertical axis is restored. You feel the spine suspended, the posture aligned without needing to force it. These signs are not subjective. They are trackable, measurable, repeatable. To anchor this state in the body, use the gesture signal. Place your hands lightly on the iliac crests, the hip bones on the sides of the pelvis. Breathe deeply for 3 cycles. On the last exhale, emit a low, deep sound coming from the bottom of the belly. This gesture takes between 30 and 60 seconds and can be repeated whenever the body needs to return to the flow. The return point is simple: a short internal phrase, "My base is alive," followed by a conscious breath and vertical posture. This brings you back to your axis when there is a deviation. It is not abstract. It is a somatic sealing. The body has been trained to remember, and when it remembers, everything changes. The blockage in the Ilio-Sacral Circle was never just muscular tension. It was vibrational memory, inherited traumas, silenced, frozen at the base so that you could survive. But survival is not the same as life. Life requires that creative energy descend from the heavens to the earth, from intention to action, from thought to flesh. And if the base is frozen, nothing descends. Everything remains suspended in the air, spinning in circles in the mind, never touching the ground. Releasing this seal is not therapeutic. It is restorative. It is giving the body back its original creative capacity that it always had, but which was interrupted at the first impact. Creation does not begin in the mind. It begins in the body. It always has. God did not create the world with thought alone. He manifested it. Incarnation is the sacred act of making the invisible visible, of making the intangible tangible. And you were made in the image of this creative force. But while your base is jammed, you do not manifest. You only imagine. And imagining without rooting is living in perpetual potential, never in real presence. Hildegard von Bingen, the medieval mystic, wrote, "The soul is rooted in the body like sap in the tree." This is not poetry, it is spiritual anatomy. Everything you create needs a root, and the root is at the base. What you felt today, whether in the first sigh, in the heat that rose from the pelvis, or in the fine tremor that ran through your legs, was not imagination. It was recognition. The body recognized that it was authorized to pulse again, to return to the flow, to remember that creation is not something you do with mental effort. It is something you allow when the base is alive, and when the base is alive, everything changes. The breath descends, the energy circulates. Life moves. Without force, without resistance, only flow. You didn't need more techniques. You needed to remember where it all began. In the forgotten seal of your base. In the ring between ilium and sacrum, where creative energy waited, silent, patient, alive, to be reactivated. And now that it has been, nothing goes back to the way it was. The body does not forget when it is touched in this way. It keeps, it seals, it transforms. And when the body transforms, the reality around it responds. Because creation was never only internal. It has always been incarnated. The body does not lie. It only waits for you to remember that it is the temple where creation becomes real. And now you have remembered. The seal has been reopened. The base is alive. And everything you will manifest from now on begins exactly there, at the point where before there was silence, and where now there is pulse. If you got this far, it wasn't by chance. It was because something inside you already knew. And now, what knew has become felt. What was jammed has been released. And what was frozen has returned to flow. If this video touched something deep in you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive the next somatic practices we will reveal. I want to know what happened in your body during the practice. Write in the comments. I awaken the Ilio-Sacral Circle and release the ancestral trauma of my base. This affirmation marks your presence on this path of somatic liberation. Send this video to anyone you feel carries rigidity at the base and doesn't know where it comes from. And don't stop here. Click on the screen and dive into another transformative video on the channel. Each practice you integrate restores. One more layer of forgotten power in your body. Remember, while the seal is closed, you imagine. When it opens, you create. The difference between intention and manifestation has always been this: a body that pulses at the base, or a body that jams before it begins. The Ilio-Sacral Circle has returned to vibrate. And now, everything you manifest has a true root.